Back on the record at 12:40.
Ms. Tienda, I've shown you and identified as 9, Plaintiff's Exhibit 9, American National Standards Institute B101, which I'll represent was published and approved in 2012. And the standard, it purports to be the standard guide for commercial entrance matting and reducing slips, trips, and falls. Are you aware of this document and its existence?
No. I mean, now, but not prior.
Okay. And I will submit, maybe it's possible that you're not the right person for Harbor Freight to discuss this. Are you not aware then of any standards, or scratch that, are you, so you're not familiar with these standards by what we call ANSI, the compliance standards, or really just standards that have been propounded and I'll represent generally accepted as guidelines for making sure floors and commercial mats are safe?
Object to the form.
Object to form.
I have not seen this standard before, not this document, no.
Are you aware of ANSI in general, though, the American National Standards Institute?
As an entity, yes.
Okay. Can you say whether Harbor Freight deems ANSI as credible or authoritative?
No. I mean, I can't say either way.
Okay. What about the National Floor Safety Institute? Can you say whether or not Harbor Freight deems the National Floor Safety Institute as credible or authoritative?
I cannot say no.
Okay. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you're probably not familiar with what's within this document then. Is that fair? That you're not familiar with what's in this document?
I am not.
Okay. Well, I'll be brief then. I'm going to turn your attention to the subpart 8 or section 8 titled Reduction of Hazards Related to Matting, and it's on page 19.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. The sub paragraph there says facility management shall take precautions to avoid mats becoming a hazard in and of themselves through regular inspections, particularly during inclement weather. Did I read that right?
Yes.
You agree with that, don't you?
I'm sure. I guess I've never seen it before, but I don't see anything objectionable. Again, we rely on UniFirst to provide expertise in this area, so I have not seen this.
Okay. I'm going to turn your attention. I'll go through these quickly, or I don't want to rush you, but I'll just point your attention to a few things. 8.3 talks about buckling. And it says if a mat buckles, either the condition that caused the mat to buckle shall be corrected, or the mat shall be secured or removed from service and replaced. You don't disagree with that, do you?
No.
Okay. And it says to reduce the comment to the right of it. It says E 8.3 to increase the dimensional stability and reduce the tendency of matting to buckle. The user should consider purchasing heavier mats, such as mats with thicker backing. I think what this standard is trying to suggest, or is suggesting, is that certain mats, as they tend to buckle, and you want to get heavier mats, or if you see buckling because it's dangerous, you want to take preventative action to prevent someone from falling. Is that fair?
Objection to form. I mean, it talks about reducing the tendency of the matting to buckle is when you would consider doing something.
Yeah.
We didn't say anything about falling, to my point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's trying to highlight also that buckling is dangerous, right?
Objection to form. Sure.
Yeah, and there are definitions of buckling within this document if there's any confusion there. And for the sake of our discussion today and for the purpose of brevity, I'll be brief. I want to turn your attention to 8.7.
Yes.
And it says mat movement over door sill. When mat placement and movement results in the mat migrating over a doorway sill, the mat shall be secured in place or another mat shall be installed that resists movement. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Do you agree or disagree with that standard?
I'm sure. Makes sense.
Okay. Is that you agree then?
Yes.
Okay, so the comment to the right of it says, to secure mats, tape along the edges or two-way tape is often employed. Cleated mats may also reduce mat slippage. Slip-resistant underlayment of the type used to secure rugs may also be used in some applications. Right?
Okay.
And then 8.8 talks about mat movement across the floor. It says when mats migrate a considerable distance, they shall be secured in place or another mat shall be selected that reduces or eliminates migration. Areas where mat migration may take place shall be monitored and the hazard corrected. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Do you agree with what's written there or disagree?
Object to the form.
I agree. I'm not sure how you secure a mat without causing a tripping hazard, so I don't, the securing part I would question, but.
Okay. And to the comment to the right attempts to highlight some ways to secure mats. And I'll remind you that this whole section of this section 8 is dedicated to reducing the hazard of mats in and of themselves and causing slips and falls. And then it talks about in 8.9, overlapping mats. It says mats shall be placed as to not overlap each other. Do you agree or disagree with that
Objection.
principle?
Agree.
Okay. And then the comment is the overlap mats create a hazard exposure as the edge will be elevated, creating a specific trip hazard. And to avoid the risk, the mats need to be secured in place. Correct?
Okay.
And the last one I'll direct your attention to is 8.10 or 8.10. Mats not lying flat. It says where mats do not lie flat, the mat shall be secured to the floor so that it lies flat or removed from service. And so some of the things that we read here, some of the things that this ANSI document warns of is buckling, migration across the door sill and migration across the floor, overlapping mats, and mats not lying completely flat. Have I fairly summarized what this document warns about?
Objection to form.
Yes.
Okay. Let me turn your attention again to the photos that we had of Exhibit 5 of the photos taken after the incident.
Oh. I got out of order. Okay.
All right. Do you want to take a look at those?
Yep, I have them.
Before you testified that these mats were properly placed and in proper condition, in light of what we've read by ANSI, do you want to, let me ask you the same question, ask if you want to adjust your testimony or alter it, which is, does Harbor Freight have an opinion about whether these mats depicted in Plaintiff's Exhibit 5 are placed in accordance with standards and guidelines, industry standards and guidelines?
Objection to form.
I think previously I said they look to be in good condition and not pose any hazards. I maintain that.
Okay. Do you see where the mats actually overlap each other on those photos?
No.
Okay. Is it your testimony that those two mats depicted in Plaintiff's Exhibit 5 are not overlapping each other?
Objection to form.
Yes.
Okay. What about ripples in the mat? Can you see any ripples in the mat at all? In either mat?
No.
Okay, can you say whether or not those mats have migrated at all?
No.
Okay, does it appear that the mats are over the door sill, or at least in contact with the door sill?
I would adjacent, not over.
Okay, and I would certainly add that they were. It appears to me that they're clearly under the door, but if, certainly you can't argue that they're flush with the door, can you?
Objection.
The automatic door in the front entrance.
Well, not that I see them flush to the front window.
What do you mean?
The door is to the. Sorry, the door is to the front of the edge of the door, but not over the actual track.
Well, you can't really tell conclusively from this picture because the automatic doors aren't open, correct?
Objection to form.
Correct.
And just so we know, do you have a pen with you, Ms. Tienda?
Not in front of me. Thank you.
Do you have anything that you can mark this exhibit? And can you just put a D over the sliding door on either one of those pictures? Let's do the first picture, the 361.
This one?
I mean, Jordan, can you establish that she's able to identify in the pictures where the sliding door is first?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at is, can you identify where the sliding door is in this photo?
I mean, again, the picture is very close up, and I can't see everything, but I assume it is on the to the right.
Let me clarify, because I don't want to get into something where I don't think we have a dispute on. But tell me if I'm wrong. If we look at bait stamp 361, you see the photo I'm looking at?
Yes.
My understanding is, based on the photos that we looked at of the front entrance of the store, is that the mat closest to the exterior door is adjacent or flush to that automatic door. Do you agree with that?
Objection to form.
It is next to the door, yes.
And my understanding of these types of doors is they separate when they open. They don't open out or they don't open in, but they actually, there's two doors that actually separate automatically away from each other. They open up in that way, correct?
Correct.
So if you can put a small d on each of the two doors that separate from each other on base stamp 361.
Jordan,
Yeah, you can write on there if that's what your question is.
no, can you identify which one you want her to mark?
Yeah, plaintiff's exhibit 361. Please put a D on any door that moves, any door that you see in the picture. Label with a D. Capital D would be great.
Yep.
If you can't do it, that's fine.
Want the mark?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Do you mind, Ms. Tienda, holding that up for the camera just so I can make sure you and I are on the same page?
Can you see it?
Perfect. I thought that's what we were talking about, but that's very helpful. Thank you very much. And so the mat is touching that door, isn't it?
Object to the form.
I mean, it appears to be in the picture very close, yes.
Can you see any space in the picture between the mat and the door?
Object to the form.
I mean, not in the, I can on the end, but not in the middle.
Yeah, so I'll represent, I can't see any space whatsoever between the side of the mat closest to the exterior of the store and the doors that you marked. Any reason to disagree with that?
I mean, there's this area up here in the middle if you need me to be very specific. But no, I see it adjacent to the door.
Circle the area that is giving you concern with the marker.
Okay. Just there.
And show me that.
There is some
Okay,
space
and
there. If we're being technical.
Sure, and that's not, right, and I'm not trying to, that's not the thing that I think concerns us for purposes of this discussion, but I do understand what you're talking about. I was talking about the side, the long side that is adjacent to the door. You don't see any space between the door and that side, do you?
No.
So it's very possible that that carpet is or the rug, or rather the mat, is actually underneath the door sill, isn't it?
Objection to form.
I mean, I guess I wouldn't think the door would open if it were obstructing the sill.
Let me show you a couple other pictures, and I think we're about done here. Let me see if I make sure I've got the right one. There's another photo of the rugs in the vestibule that was taken shortly after the fall. Madam Court Reporter, do you have those? I believe they were an exhibit to Ms. Dubos's deposition.
Okay, hold on. Yes, I have 2 other photos.
Yeah, why don't we just, do you mind holding those up for me, Ms. Tienda, so I can see? It looks like those are the same ones. Why don't we just use the one that already has an exhibit sticker on it, and those appear to be the same photos, correct? Ms. Tienda?
I can't tell. I don't think I've seen this one. But maybe I see a shoe and a shoe. Maybe it's a close-up of the other or a blow-up.
Okay.
But I have,
Let's just
I have
do
this
this.
one.
Let's just to prevent any discrepancy, we'll just label them both as Plaintiff's Exhibit 10. And I'll represent, one of them was identified as an Exhibit 5 to Ms. Dubos's deposition. When I see those mats, I don't see that the mats there are overlapping at all in Plaintiff's Exhibit 10.
Yes, true.
If you compare those photos to the photos that we were looking at, which are Plaintiff's Exhibit 6, do you see how why I would contend that the mats in Plaintiff's Exhibit 6 are actually overlapping?
Objection to the form.
Okay. So this is 6. No, I mean, it's a very different angle. Sorry, I don't understand. This is 6,
Okay, well,
yeah?
take a look at. No, sorry. Okay, so we're looking at something different then. I apologize. 5.
5. Okay, hang on.
Same objection.
This one's 5. Thank you.
So comparing Plaintiff's Exhibits 5 to Plaintiff's Exhibits 10, do you see why I would contend, or someone may contend, that the mats in Exhibit 10 do not overlap, while the mats in Exhibit 5 do overlap?
Objection. Object to the form.
I mean, they're closer together, but I can't see that they're overlapping specifically, no.
Okay. Can you see any space between the two mats identified in Plaintiff's Exhibit 5?
Maybe a little on the left-hand side of the 362.
Okay. Can you pull out the pen one more time and circle the area where there's space between the two mats?
Sure.
Thank you so much. And so you can't see space between the mats on the other ones, can you?
On the other 5, no, the angles.
No, I mean just on.
Oh.
I mean you can't see space where you've not circled between the 2 mats, correct?
Oh, got it.
Objection informed.
No, not from the picture.
Okay, but your contention, your Harbor Freight's position is those mats are unequivocally not overlapping.
Yes.
Okay. Considering anything that we've talked about today, Ms. Tienda, is there anything Harbor Freight could have done better to make the entryway safer for Ms. DeBose on the day she fell?
No.
Is there anything that Harbor Freight could have done better with regard to handling of the situation, and I'm referring to after her fall on December 21st, 2016?
Not to my understanding, no.
Is there anything that Harbor Freight would have preferred that their employees had done differently that day?
Objection informed.
No.
Okay. We asked in our notice of deposition, I asked about other falls at other stores, and particularly stores involving mats like this. What other falls are you aware of that have occurred, whether on mats or carpet or anything in Harbor Freight stores?
And to reiterate the objection that we outlined in response to the notice. Yes, sir.
Are you aware of any other falls? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
In all 1,000 stores or in particular stores?
I mean, let me just say, are you aware of any other falls in the last 5 years?
Objection informed.
There are 2 other incidents in this area with trips.
Okay. Can you tell me about those incidents?
One, I believe, involved a defective mat, or there might have been a ripple or a curl in a mat. And the other one wasn't necessarily a fall. I think it was just an objection to the mat itself, but I don't think anyone saw the customer fall or trip.
So just the one about the defect, and you're not talking about our incident, 2 others, right?
Yeah. Yes, not this one.
So tell me what everything you know, when these happened, what store they were at, whether a lawsuit was filed, those types of things.
I don't know.
Okay, because you're the only person I have to ask these questions of, and that was one of the things that we wanted to talk about today. So I'm not to put pressure on you, but can you find out that information and provide it to your attorney?
What information are you requesting specifically?
Well, she has said that there are 2 other incidents that occurred in the area. And when you say the area, you're talking about the Atlanta area, I assume, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so when those falls occurred, what happened in the falls, whether a lawsuit was filed, those types of things.
I mean, again, we would object to providing them based on the objections outlined both in our responses to discovery and response to this notice.
Okay. I mean, I understand that you objected. I'm not contesting that, but it's relevant information. Other similar incidents is being deemed to be relevant time and time again. Whether it's admissible is another thing, but certainly relevant within the scope of discovery. If you're instructing your witness not to testify or stating that you won't produce something, I think it's your duty to file and obtain a motion or file a motion for protective order and to obtain a protective order, and none was obtained. So I understand you objected, but you can't now you can't instruct the. Well, I guess you can try, but I don't think the law allows you to instruct your witness not to answer something that is clearly relevant within the scope of discovery.
I never instructed the witness not to answer.
So she's not properly prepared then to answer those questions that we've we've noticed her to answer for. She's admitted there were 2 other incidents in the Atlanta area that have happened. She said she doesn't remember the time or the location. I think that's very, very relevant and reasonable for us to understand that information, and no protective order has been entered. So I'm not trying to get in a fight, Rebecca, I'm really not, but I would ask that you produce that information and avoid having us to file a motion to compel. I mean, but that's my position. So I guess we'll deal with that, Ms. Tienda, with your attorney. I hate to put all this on the record, but as I was saying to your attorney, I do believe that is relevant and discoverable information, certainly within the scope of what we requested today. But as I understand from your testimony, that you don't have any information at the present time about those 2 other falls, other than that there were 2 other incidents within the Atlanta area.
Objection to form.
Nothing other than what I told you, no.
And you do understand that those other 2 falls did involve at least an allegation of tripping on a mat?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll move on to some other points here, and I think I'll be done. Any other communications that you've had with any other parties about this injury?
No. The other falls that were that you talked about, did those also involve UniFirst mats? Yes.
Okay. Do you have a general idea of when those falls occurred? And what I'm asking is before or after Ms. Dubos's injury?
Before.
Okay. Do you know Ms. Dubose at all?
No.
Does Harbor Freight have any opinion right now as to the value of what her damages are, or what you would say is her which we sort of say as attorneys, what her case is worth?
Objection to form.
No.
Given what we've discussed today, do you have any opinion about whether Harbor Freight should have any responsibility for Ms. Dubos's fall or her injuries?
Sorry, ask again, please.
Yeah, given everything we've talked about today, do you have any further opinion about whether Harbor Freight should be responsible or has some responsibility for Ms. Dubos's fall or her injuries?
No, no change to the original opinion, no.
Okay. I may have some other questions, but I'm gonna reserve some time. But if Ms. Adair has any questions, I'll turn the time over to her.
Thank you, Jordan. Hi, Ms. Tienda. My name is Jennifer Adair, and I am counsel for UniFirst Corporation. I am in Atlanta right now, asking you questions by telephone. If you, for any reason, don't understand me or can't hear me, I would ask you or your attorney just to speak up, and we'll do what we can. First of all, kind of a basic question, but what is the base for Harbor Freight maintaining that the mat that was involved in this incident was a mat that UniFirst supplied?
I think we have an invoice from the 10th of December showing the drop-off of the front door mats.
Okay. Are there any mats that are positioned in the entryway to this Harbor Freight store other than mats supplied by UniFirst?
No, not to my knowledge. Sorry.
Do the Harbor Freight stores sometimes keep and use their own mats?
No.
Who was the store manager on December 21st of 2016?
Actually, I don't know. I don't think the store manager is in the list of people involved. I don't think it was Kim. I'm not sure, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. If we, for the purpose of these questions, assume that the maps in question in this case are the maps that are reflected in that invoice that you just referenced, would you have any reason to dispute that the maps were dropped off by UniFirst on December 16th of 2016?
No.
Okay. And what information do you have regarding whether the mat was inspected when it was delivered?
No information.
Okay. You have reviewed the invoice, is that correct?
Yes.
And it was signed for by a Harbor Freight employee, is that correct?
I mean, there is a signature. I can't tell. I don't remember who the signature was from.
Okay. Do you dispute that the person who signed that invoice, and I will agree with you, the signature is hard to read, but do you dispute that the person who signed that invoice was a Harbor Freight employee?
No.
Okay. If the mat, when it was received by Harbor Freight, had been in any way defective, would Harbor Freight have rejected it?
I don't know in this particular case.
All right. Do you have any reason to believe that the mat was defective in any way when it was delivered to you?
No.
Okay, and do you have any reason that the mat itself, and I'm not talking about the positioning of the mat, but the mat itself was in any point, in any way defective from the time it was delivered to the time it was picked up?
No.
All right. And according to the invoices that I believe you reviewed, would you agree that the mat was picked up by UniFirst on December 30th of 2016?
Yes.
Okay, did did Harbor Freight at any point notify UniFirst that it was dissatisfied with the condition of the mat or with the way that UniFirst had placed the mat?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did Harbor Freight notify UniFirst that there was anything or that any incident had happened that involved these mats when UniFirst came back to pick them up on December 30th?
I cannot say yes or no to that. I don't know.
Okay. If you don't know, is there anybody else within the Harbor Freight organization that would have more knowledge than you about whether Harbor Freight notified UniFirst of any problems with the mat?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. What was the reason that Harbor Freight did not retain the mat after this incident occurred, knowing that Ms. DeBose was claiming that she had fallen because of the mat?
The store wouldn't have retained the mat because it wasn't a piece of merchandise returned as part of the incident.
All right. Did Harbor Freight ask UniFirst to retain the mat?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Did Harbor Freight even notify UniFirst that the mat had been involved in a customer fall?
I do not know.
Okay. Does Harbor Freight have any written or otherwise disseminated standards for retention of evidence involved in an accident?
Just for product that we sell in stores.
Okay, but if it's not a product that you sell in stores, you would not retain an item that was involved in an accident?
Objection form.
No.
Okay. Once the mats are delivered to Harbor Freight by UniFirst, you don't expect Harbor Freight to continue coming back to the store to continue servicing those mats until they pick them up about 2 weeks later. Is that fair?
Sorry, just to clarify, do you mean Do you mean I don't expect UniFirst to continue to service the mat in between?
Correct. Let me re-ask. I might have gotten tongue-tied. Let me re-ask the question. Once UniFirst drops off the mats at Harbor Freight, they typically pick them up about 2 weeks later. During that 2-week period, you don't expect UniFirst to continue coming back to the store to service those mats, do you?
No.
Okay. If for some reason a mat happens to migrate or to bunch up, it would be Harbor Freight employees who would reposition that. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And you wouldn't call UniFirst to come back out to the property and say, hey, this mat has migrated by several inches, come reposition it. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to go back to that daily cleaning checklist that you were asked about. And I understand that it states that on Tuesdays, the employees are to shake off or to vacuum entry mats as needed. Is it your understanding that this incident occurred on a Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. And so this mat would have been shaken off or vacuumed by Harbor Freight employees the prior day. Is that correct?
Object to the form.
Yes.
You can answer.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And even if it had been, I understand that the standard says it's to be shaken off or vacuumed as needed. If it were not shaken off or vacuumed, that would be because your employees looked at it and determined that that was not needed. Is that fair?
Object to the form.
Can I look at the checklist? We have it, right? Sorry.
And I'll actually strike that question. I can see how that might have been confusing, and let me take another stab at it. My point is this: in order to determine whether that mat needs to be shaken off or vacuumed on Tuesdays, your employees would certainly need to look at the mat first, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. You discussed earlier the letter that ESIS, which I'll represent to you as a third-party claims administrator for UniFirst, sent to UniFirst responding and asking for more information in response to a tender. Do you have any information that UniFirst was notified of this incident before that tender letter was sent by Harbor Freight?
No.
All right. Do you know which of the Harbor Freight employees took the photos that were produced? I think they were marked as plaintiffs 5 and 6.
No.
Okay. And I understand these are produced to us in PDF format, which I understand is pretty much how you have to do it if you're going to base stamp those. But does Harbor Freight still have the original JPEG versions of these photographs?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, all right. Are you contending that UniFirst did anything wrong that caused this accident?
No, only that UniFirst is responsible for the mats and changing them out.
Okay. And what do you mean by responsible for the mats?
They own the mats and swap them out per the contract.
Okay. Has Harbor Freight, and I'm going to talk specifically about this store, did Harbor Freight ever communicate to UniFirst that any mats it supplied had a tendency to migrate over the door sill?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. And if a Harbor Freight employee had noticed that mat had migrated over the door sill, they would have returned it to the appropriate position. Is that correct?
Objection.
Yeah, if they thought it to be a problem, yes.
Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions then. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a couple if, Rebecca, you don't have any. Do you have any documentation at all?
Jordan, I do have a few
anything
questions.
whatsoever? Yeah. T-Land, right? Am I saying that right?
What?
What's happening?
I said
Yeah,
I said I do have a few questions.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Okay. Can you tell me about the activity in the store during the time of year when this incident occurred?
So it would have been in December, so there would have been a lot of traffic in and out of the store through the front entrance. This is the only entrance, but of both employees and customers. So there would have been a high volume of traffic going in and out.
And we talked a lot about written policies and procedures of Harbor Freight. Are there are Harbor Freight employees trained to conduct any activities which would relate to the mat in the vestibule area of the store that it's not contained in a written policy and procedure?
Just the practice of, when going about their duties and walking the sales floor, that they would be on the lookout for any kind of hazard or any condition that needed to be corrected throughout the store, including the vestibule.
And if a Harbor Freight employee would have noticed that when performing those tasks that a mat had migrated or bunched or wrinkled, what action would you expect for them to take based on their training?
To readjust
Objection.
it. Oh, sorry. To readjust it.
Based on the documents that you've reviewed in preparation for the deposition, like for instance the incident report and witness statements, do you have any knowledge that there was a buckling issue with the mat in question?
No.
Do you know whether Harbor Freight had any, strike that, the mats that were provided by UniFirst for this store, were there issues with buckling of those mats around the time of this incident?
No.
Same type of question. Based on the documents that you've reviewed in preparation for this deposition, do you know of any issues with migration of the mat at issue?
No.
And was migration of the mats provided by UniFirst around the time of the incident something that was a frequent occurrence at this location?
No.
Can you tell me a little bit about the employees who were involved in the incident, as far as who were reported on the incident report and gave employee statements as far as their positions and?
Their roles?
Yes.
They were all in leadership, I think, with the exception of, there's one sales associate, I believe.
Okay, and are you familiar with those employees?
Personally, no.
Okay. And when you say that they are in roles of leadership, what do you mean by that?
Supervisors and assistant managers.
Do they go through any sort of training that would be different than a just sales associate?
There's usually a leadership version of all training to make sure they understand how to administer in this case, for example, safety in the store or approvals or things that you need in a leadership role that is supplementary to what just a general associate would take, yes.
Would you expect the persons in leadership at Harbor Freight to be more heightened to safety issues than other store employees?
I mean, in that they're responsible for the overall running and operation of the store, yes.
Going back to the incident and the witness statements, do you know whether when the witness statements were prepared based on your review of the documents?
They seem to be prepared the day of the incident.
And what makes you say that?
Just they're very detailed, and they had they took statements from the people who were working, which, you know, the store's open 12 hours a day, so not everyone is working all the time.
As far as the MAT is concerned and Harbor Freight's policies with respect to preserving items that have been involved in an incident, would Harbor Freight have retained the MAT in question if it was defective in any sort of way?
Objection.
Yes, objection as well.
I'll rephrase. If Harbor Freight, if an incident occurred involving a mat and there was a defect with the mat involved in the incident, would Harbor Freight have instructed its or trained its employees to retain the mat?
I mean, not specifically. I think there's general direction on if there is a piece of, air quote, a piece of evidence in any kind of customer incident that they felt relevant, that they should not get rid of it or give it back to the customer. In some cases, that they should try and retain it. But it's usually focused around product that we sell.
And can you describe for me the type of training that employees are given with respect to an incident report and gathering information with regard to any witnesses other than store employees and the person involved in the incident?
I mean, there's documentation that explains how to fill out the incident report. That's also reflected in new hire orientation, so that any new leader coming into the building knows that that is a requirement and a job duty should it happen.
I don't have any other questions at this time.
Just a few follow-up questions, and I'll try and be brief. Ms. Tienda, I thought you testified all the way at the beginning of our deposition that you didn't know when the employee statements were taken. In other words, when they wrote those statements out. But it sounds like you told your attorney a minute ago that you thought it was likely on the same day of the fall.
Just because they're very
Right.
detailed, yeah.
Okay. I guess very detailed is subjective though, right?
Sure.
You don't have, let me just simply say this, and I think we've already gone over this. None of those statements are dated as to when they were written, were they?
Correct.
So other than your personal observations about what may be included within those statements, you really have no idea when they were written, other than they were written prior to when they were turned over to you on January 6th of 2017, correct?
Correct.
And you've never actually spoken to those employees, so you don't know when they were actually written as we sit here, right?
I have not spoken to the employees, no.
Do you have any documentation whatsoever that any employee of Harbor Freight at any time actually did move a mat that had migrated?
No.
Objection form.
Oh, sorry. No.
Do you have any documentation whatsoever of any issues of any of the mats you've ever received from UniFirst?
Objection form.
Same objection.
Sorry, can you restate the question?
Yeah, I mean, you testified in response to a questioning from counsel that you had no issues with buckling of mats or migrating mats in the time prior to Ms. Dubos's fall. I'm just wondering what's the protocol, what sort of documentation would evidence to corporate Harbor Freight that there was any issue?
Objection form.
Oh, understood. I mean, if there were a very obvious issue or there were recurring quality issues, typically a store would let us know through normal channels. I'm not aware of them doing that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. What are the normal channels? Would there be an email or a form that they fill out to say, hey, look, we've gotten a defective rug from UniFirst. Let's call them or do something like that.
No form. They might have told their district manager.
Okay. So whether or not there were any issues, the only way we would really know is if there was some memorialized writing of that, and we're not aware of any memorialized writing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just because there may be higher volume during the season doesn't excuse Harbor Freight from taking a higher level of care to meet the need of the volume, right?
Objection form.
Objection.
No.
Yeah, I mean, so in other words, kind of what we were talking about at the beginning, the more people that may be walking over a rug necessitate more careful care by Harbor Freight and making sure the rugs don't get disheveled or unduly dirty or something like that, correct?
Objection form.
Correct. I just think with an increase in traffic, there are more opportunities for other customers to have displaced something or to something to have happened that Harbor Freight was unaware of, right? More traffic, more people in and out.
Sure. I understand that Harbor Freight and UniFirst are no longer there's no longer a contractual relationship allowing UniFirst to service Harbor Freight's mats. Why is that? What was the purpose, or why was that relationship severed?
Object form.
Join.
Well, let me ask you this: is UniFirst still servicing your rugs or your mats?
Yes.
So there is still an ongoing relationship between UniFirst and Harbor Freight for servicing these mats.
Yes.
Are there still mats in the entryway of the Harbor Freight store today?
This store in question?
Yes.
I do not know, actually.
Well, my number 19 on my notice of deposition was whether mats. One of the issues I wanted to discuss was whether mats by UniFirst are still in use at the Harbor Freight at issue, and if not, when and why they were removed. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Sorry if I wasn't clear. I don't have any knowledge of them being removed, but I don't have photographs of them in place today with different mats. Is that your question?
Oh. Yeah, I'm just wondering if there are no longer mats, and I'm not saying there are, but if there are no longer mats in place at the entryway of the Harbor Freight store, why is that?
There probably are. I have no reason to believe there aren't.
Okay. Is there anything else that we haven't asked you today that you feel is important, or something that you think I should know as Ms. Dubos's attorney as it may relate to her claim? or anything that we've talked about today that has reminded you of something that you said earlier, or something that you feel like you want to add?
No.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is because this is my only chance to ask you questions, or maybe the only chance, and so I want to make sure that you've had every opportunity to say everything you feel that you need to say.
Okay.
Okay, have you understood the questions that I asked you today?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
This concludes today's deposition of Alicia Tienda.
Going off the record at 1:35